But look, thank you very much. The We interviewed the wonderful Ellen Tefanis. I think it was last year.
Yep.
And she was telling us about the music, gigging, and endorsements. And she showed us a wonderful pedalboard system called PedalPods. And this created quite a few questions in the group, in the Pedal Planet community, of what's this interesting pedalboard system that, you know, some hadn't seen before. So I was very keen to get you guys in to talk about your system so that members of FX Pedal Planet community can see what you do and look at the system that you offer, because it's a pretty unique system, isn't it? Are you aware of anything else on the market like it at all?
There's nothing. I'll have Rick get into the history about how we got to this point, but there's 2 US patents on this that have 30 claims between the 2 patents. So there's not anything else out there like this.
Yeah.
And it's protected both on the mechanical hardware side of it, but also how the electronics are deployed. So we're pretty proud of it.
Yeah.
See, before we when we had the idea, before we took any action, we went to the NAMM show in Anaheim, California, and spent 3 days walking the show just to make sure that nobody else had anything like it. And after 3 days, we dropped the hammer and started in on the building process and that kind of thing. So we did some homework before we jumped in.
A lot of homework.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it is a fantastic, unique idea, and you know, I'd never seen anything like it before. And when Ellen showed it, I was like, "Crikey, that's why hasn't it been done before?" So, I mean, where did the idea come from? Where did you get the idea of creating this modular system that's for each pedal to actually sit on?
Well, I'm a guitar player. I've been playing for 30 some odd years. I've been in bands since high school, and I love effects pedals. I love fiddling around with them. I've had several boards over my lifetime, and as fun as they are, we all know that there are certain problems and hassles and inconveniences that crop up, and probably the greatest of those is when you run out of room and you buy another effects pedal, the latest and greatest thing on the market, and you just can't make it work on the board. And so you've got to make that terrible decision of removing one of your old favorites to make room for the new one. And so I was actually in this process in the basement one day, and I finally had to give up an old pedal that I didn't want to give up, but I had to put the new one in. I had to do that. So I put it in there, and then I found out that the inputs and outputs on the new pedal were in a different location, so my cables weren't long enough. And then I found out that it required 18 volts, and I didn't have an 18-volt power supply. So I was pulling my hair out, and I looked right next to me. My daughter had left a bag of Lego blocks sitting there, and the light bulb went off, and I was like, you know what? Wouldn't it be cool if you could make a board out of interconnectable pieces so you could reshape, make them larger, smaller, more convenient?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where it's very organic history behind this idea. And so Jerry and I were sitting on his boat one night having scotch, and he's got a background in the consumer electronics industry, and he loves high-end, very loud audio. And so I kind of pitched the idea to him, and I saw the mad scientist in him kind of take off with it. And I'll let him pick the story up at that point.
Yeah, so, Rick had explained, and it showed me that he was on his 3rd board. This one was a custom board that he'd had made, heavy board.
Very.
Yeah.
Coffin, really.
Yeah. And he's like, I just want to add on to this. Can you figure out a way to add on? And wouldn't it be cool if I could add on again and take away as needed? And so I'd over the course of the year prior had taught myself CAD and had purchased a 3D printer. So I'm like, this is a perfect project to test and make happen. And so I went to him a week later and said, hey, I figured out a way to where I can use these interlocks to join them together and change the physical footprint of the board. And I said, well, would it be cool if I could also have that interconnect be the wire maintenance? So the wire could go between what we now call pods, and you wouldn't see them on the top like you see on your board. He's like, yeah. And I go, well, what if I was able to also provide power for each one of those locations? You wouldn't have to buy new power supplies and swap things out and rewire power supplies. And he's like, no, that's witchcraft. You can't do that. And I said, well, what if I could do audio as well and make it to where everything could happen on one cable? And at that point, I think he called me out on it and said, prove it. And so I hand cut my own circuit boards, and we did a lot of testing, and this grew into what the system is now. And so during the design process, all of the audio and power is carried on a single category cable. So there's 8 conductors in here. And we have people go, you can't use a computer cable to do this. You can't do digital. It's not the same as analog. The whole system's analog. All I'm doing is using this as a means to connect one pod to another pod. And the cable was originally invented, in the late 1800s, early 1900s. I forget the exact date. And it's designed to carry analog signal over a long distance and have a high probability of rejecting noise. That's why it's a twisted cable. So there's 8 wires in here, and each pair is twisted at a different rate to naturally knock out outside interference. And also has very, very low capacitance over a great distance.
Wow.
And so that's why we chose that.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah. So, and back to, my background in doing all this stuff. And so in order to wire in a pod, all you simply have to do is plug the pod in, plug it into the one next to it, and it's connected. You're completely wired. You take your pedal, you plug it into your analog cables or your audio jacks, hook up your power, you're good to go.
Wow.
Wait, I don't know if you're seeing this. I'm not paying attention if I'm actually showing it well.
No, that's great. No, yeah, it's and
yeah. And so you have a selector switch, so we can select 9, 12, 15, or 18 volts. At 9 volts, each one of these is rated for 550 milliamps. At 12 volts, it's 420 milliamps. At 15 volts, 330 milliamps. And at 18 volts, it's 280 milliamps.
Wow.
And the way that it works is we're feeding all this through what's called the gas pedal. And I'll show that to you here in a second. But you have your 2 loops of audio. If you have you want it on your first loop, you simply plug it in and flip it from bypass to pedal. And now that is live in your chain. If it's a stereo pedal, you use both.
Wow.
It's that simple.
So you can do stereo rigs, you can do a wet dry, you can do a send return in a direct. So you get a lot of flexibility as to how you want to run your system.
From the single pod, you've got all that functionality.
Yep. And then the gas pedal, that's what the gas pedal looks like. So the top section of the gas pedal is your input. So we do a 24 volt, 60 watt, so 2.5 amps input. The power supply we use is a medical grade power supply. It's used for powering surgical lasers. So very clean power supply. The whole top section is a voltage monitoring and isolation circuit. You see a 5 volt USB. So that's isolated so you can charge your handheld devices if you want. We also utilize a downlight. People will plug in one of the USB downlights.
Yeah.
And then the center section is all the audio distribution port of it. Two loops of audio, as Rick said. You can combine the loops by flipping a switch, or you can run them independent with a single input. There's 2 audio file buffers that are in this. So once again, my background being in audio and in consumer electronics, we spent a ton of money on the 2 buffers. So the buffers can either be physically added into the circuit or removed from the circuit. So it's a true bypass. We either add them in the chain or take them out of the chain. And there's one for each loop. One for loop 1, one for loop 2. And like I said, we spent a ton of time and money on those buffer circuits. And so that's how this whole thing works. And then through the category cable out goes on to the next pod. And that's where everything happens. And the other things that we did or during the design consideration are these keystones, what we call them. I designed those so that I could utilize them for accessories. So this is a category extension. So we've had some players and we've had recording studios that want to have multiple boards and be able to add them in or take them out efficiently. And so that becomes the part where the category cable plugs in.
Right.
We have other people that want to utilize them for 9-volt battery to power, is it fuzz, right? Yeah, fuzz pedals primarily.
Yeah.
And so the design was to be able to utilize this for other options. In Rick's board, on his master board, I put a well, you can explain it. I built a master volume for him, volume knob.
Right. Because I run a stereo rig in my band, you know, when I want to increase the volume on the whole system, I don't want to have to go to each amp and do it separately.
Yeah.
So I set them at uniform volume, and then from the board, I just hit one volume knob, and I can bring the whole system up or bring it down, depending on what I need.
Very nice.
So lots of options. This system gives you a lot of flexibility. You know, we tried to answer the problems that you face when you play live music or just in general with building and maintaining the board.
So some of the other things that during the design process, the industrial design, I had some revisions done, and then I hired a gentleman that's very well known in the consumer electronics industry as the industrial designer. And so the angles, the colors, all this was done on purpose to maximize the rigidity of it, the ease of manufacturing. But we have a picture on her website. I had Rick pull his vehicle up on 3 of these, his Tahoe up on 3 of them. They didn't create, pop, or do anything. So, you know, tried to think of all this other stuff. I watched Rick for years. He claims that he doesn't do it, but guitarists, they have a tendency to spill their beverage on stage. So there's drain holes that are put in so that the fluid drains out. These are silicone feet. So on a slippery surface, they grab, it doesn't slide. Some of the other things that were done to this was, like I said, the way that it's hollowed out is to reduce weight without taking away from the strength. And then the example of how the pods connect together. So these keystones, like I said, are reconfigurable. You can move them.
Right. Yeah.
And then to join another pod, you use what's known as a double block, and it simply slides in, clicks in and locks, and then you would click it in on the other pod in order to join the two together.
On any 4 sides.
On any 4 sides. Your wire maintenance is right here. And we can show you an example of a board that doesn't utilize the electronics to wire it as a normal DIL. And then when you put the lid on it, it clamps it down, and that's what physically locks that in place. I'll get that out of your way.
Incredible.
So that's how the system works. So from a mechanical standpoint, during this design phase, like I said, the gentleman that I brought in to help us do this, we tried all different kinds of angles and shapes and colors, and oh, this looks too feminine. It looks like you don't want to step on it. Oh, this looks too industrial. And so we settled it. If you look at these lines, there are a lot of lines that are taken from an Abrams battle tank, a U.S. Army tank. So we tried to mimic that. On the electronic side of it, we showed you the board, and we showed you the gas pedal. I don't know if we're going to be able to see this. Here, we'll do it down. You might have to hold that up, Brad. So look, I plugged in a DIL. We're just using a 24-volt battery to power it.
Yep.
So you can see, we do that. You can see that it's powered up. The LEDs, a lot of people have asked, you can have these turned off. You don't have to have them on.
And can you, that was one of the questions I was going to ask, can you have different colored, do you have a choice of different colored LEDs?
Each one is an RGB, so red, blue, green LED with a brightness switch. So you have those 3 primary colors, and then if you take red and blue, it makes purple.
Okay.
If you do red and green, it makes yellow.
Are you able to dim the LED? And
there's just a high and low switch.
Right.
So when we set this, Rick can attest, being on a dark stage. One, they look amazing on a dark stage, but the second part of it is that it makes it, you can set that level either high or low. And most people run it at high. I tend to run it on low because I want that background effect. I don't want it standing out and punching you. But we have individuals that'll take all their pedals that are distortion pedals and put them in red. So all the red ones are distortions. We have people like the boss board that will show you, I think it's up on the screen, there where we color match the colors to the pedals. But some of the other things that people have asked us about, they bring up, man, this is a lot of circuitry and that's just more room for failure. We hear it all the time. And the point that I make on this is, out of the hundreds of systems that we have out there, we've had one bad board. In that one bad board, the green LED didn't work. So we get stories of guys, and I'm not condoning this, but we hear stories of guys whose gear has been trapped in a rainstorm. And they simply dry it out and there hasn't been any issues. But the advantage of the system when we designed this, the gentleman that I had help me with the electronic side of it was also a very well-known electrical engineer in the consumer electronics, very high end on the audio side of it. And audio amplifiers, power supplies are a big part of it. So the switch mode power supply, each one of these pods are galvanically isolated. So if I have this one at 9 volts, this one at 12, this one at 15, it doesn't matter. And if I have a problem with the pedal, so you can see the meter, I think it's right side up, you can see the colors. If I short this pod, goes out, see the light turn off? Yeah. Turn back on, off. It doesn't affect any of the other pods. And I can sit here all afternoon. There's an input and output fuse on this thing. So I'm still having it as a short, and as soon as I relieve the short, that pod comes back on.
Back on.
So to the point on the selecting of the voltage, 9, 12, 15, and 18 volts.
Wow.
It's that simple. If you have center pin positive, you simply use, we can set this down so it doesn't fall. You can simply use a gender bender and you're good to go. The power supplies are strong enough to run most pedals. I say most. We have boards that are running 24-volt pedals where we do a modification to the board for the customer and run it directly off the bus. Some of them are higher current. So let's say you have a pedal that's 1.5 amp, then you simply parallel to the power supplies together and you're good. And if you notice, there was 2 power ports on each board. The reason why I did that was it's for mini pedals. So if you had 2 mini pedals on there, 2 9-volt mini pedals, you don't have to worry about wiring and powering both. You just plug one into one pod or port one into the other port, and it's done.
Superb.
So we tried to think through everything. During the design, we started this, back in 2016?
Yep.
And the rev, for this rev of board, you demoed it, for over a year, didn't you? You and we had some other people, Bill and some of the others, that just beat the hell out of it and toured with it for a year. With 0 problems. So that made us confident to go ahead and go forward with the manufacturing of it.
When the pods are linked in, how sturdy is it to transport? Is it going to, if you say my pedal board is blinking huge, but I have that from a practicality point of view that the bands are playing, I need an array of pedals there. If the band wants to play a song, I need to have the effect there. But I can pick my board up and I can, it doesn't collapse. Right. Those links you've got in the middle, how secure are they?
They are very secure. I've got a big board that's back here. You'll probably get to see it in greater detail in a minute, but it's pretty long and wide. And they're built intentionally with a little flex on there because there's no stage in the world that's perfectly level. So I've actually draped mine over the microphone stand leg, and it's sturdy and it holds the microphone stand in place. So they flex a little bit on purpose, but they're very rigid and strong. And I've been using mine for 3.5 years now without any issues whatsoever.
That was what I was going to ask. When I first saw the system and I looked at the prices, I've got to admit, I thought great system, and I thought, yeah, it's on the higher end of the price bracket, but then I looked on your website today, and you've done all the price comparisons, and actually, and I think that is quite important when you actually, it's not just a pedal board that you're providing, it's the power and everything else. And there's a lot of things that you get with the PedalPod system that you don't have to buy extras with additional systems. Do you know what I mean? So
we wanted turnkey. That was the whole thinking, to make it convenient. I mean, the buffers alone, if you had to go out and buy these buffers, they'd be $100 a piece, and that's all included. All your cables, all your patch power cables, the power source, the ability to backlight the system, the noise reduction, it's all in there. You just bring the guitar and the pedals. So, you know, we get the price question a lot. And if you buy any board on the market, which is just a piece of wood or steel, a wedged wood or steel, by the time you add in all the features that we give you right out of the gate, we're going to be dollar for dollar right in the middle of the rest of the herd.
Yeah.
There's inexpensive solutions that are great solutions.
Yeah.
And we think the world of those manufacturers. It's by the time you add everything else in.
Yeah.
But then the cost that you're not looking at is the time it takes you to build it.
Yeah.
This can be built in a very short period of time and can be reconfigured. So you're not scrapping your old board and, you know, giving it to a buddy or throwing it in the trash or selling it on eBay. And same thing with your power supply and your terminated cables that you cut and put together. This you just continue to add on or take away.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because the cabling can cost a lot of money. I mean, I'm very serious in how my effects and my board, you know, and I kind of have the philosophy of there's no point, but if I'm going to invest in as good a gear as I can, then the cables that are matching up each pedal and going to the amp and from the guitar have got to be, you know, equally as good. It's got to be as good as I can afford. And you're right, when you cut those off, sometimes you can't use them again.
Right.
And I've got that situation now. I'm looking at redoing my board, and you do get to that situation whereby it's like, well, what pedals do I take off? I don't really want to take that, because I'm so intrinsically or very passionate about each individual pedal and what it does and what it provides. And I love what each pedal does and what it provides. I don't want to get rid of it. I want to, do you know what I mean? I want to have it on, I want to keep it on the board and just add others to it. Do you know what I mean?
Right. We have a customer who's actually a really fun story. His wife found our system online, reached out to us. I have a conversation with her, and she says, hey, I want to buy this for him for his birthday. He's a guitarist. It looks intriguing. He's not good with power tools. Is he going to be able to put it together? And I'm like, can he hold a screwdriver without putting his eye out? She goes, yeah, I think so. And I go, then he should be fine. And
good for me then.
Yeah. So she bought basically this setup, which we call it a fly rig. So it's a gas pedal and 3 pod locations. And yes, that is a multi-effects that you see that we're able to power on the system. So she buys this rig for him, he gets it. And there's instructional videos on our website and on the YouTube channel that walk you through it, plus very in-depth owner's manual that comes in every box. And we're available to be contacted as well if you have questions. So about a month later, I get an order from that same customer, but it's from the husband for 2 more pods. And then a couple of weeks later, 2 more pods. Then I get this phone call from his wife, and she goes, I don't know why I did this. And she goes, I have now fed his addiction. He keeps buying pedals, and I hold you responsible. And I just started giggling, and I'm like, I'm sorry. And he's had so much fun with it, that he's got a board probably about the size of Rick's behind us.
Great.
So yeah, I mean, that's what it's there for.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be able to create, and this is why, we're in a handful of recording studios across the country. Probably the most notable is Seymour Duncan's studio in California. And these audio engineers love us because the system is really that quiet. But we have is the guy in New York bought the studio in New York that bought all these plates. And so when they have an artist come in to record, it's very simple for them to reconfigure, add their pedals, take pedals off.
And he will actually email the guitar player a week out, and he'll give him a buffet list of all of his effects. And the guitarist will email back and say, all right, I want this pedal first, this pedal second, this pedal third. And he's got it all in place before the guy even walks in the door. So it's a big time saver.
Yeah, we learned a lot during this process with the recording studios, when they're talking about how much money is lost in troubleshooting audio noises and, artists fussing around with everything. And they're like, this is saving us so much money. It's unbelievable.
And Steve, one other point, let me see that pedal. With a few extra top plates, you literally can just take the top plates with the pedals off and relocate them. And literally have a new board, a whole different board in 20 minutes.
One thing I was going to ask, I don't think we've covered it, and forgive me if we have, but how the pedals actually fix to the top plates.
So once again, me over engineering things. The 4 screws are essentially what hold the plate onto the pod.
Mm-hmm.
The pedal can be mounted a couple different ways. It ships with Velcro, and I am not a fan of Velcro. I'm sorry. I don't like it. This is actually held on. I don't know if you're going to be able to see in the shadows. That is thin 3M double-sided tape that holds it to the plate. So if you want to take this off, all you'd have to do is twist the pedal and it comes off.
And there's no glue left.
No glue, no residue on the pedal. So for those of you that buy, sell, and trade pedals, that's the easiest way to do it. On the Boss pedals, and I could have done it on this as well, you'll see the screw holes that hold the bottom plate on the pedal. I simply mark those, drill through, and then run the screws through where the existing holes are and hold it on that way. So when Yoshi and his team came by from Boss and was looking at the Boss pedal board, they were looking at this going, how did you mount these without Velcro? And then obviously you can still use the old bike chain method. And then for like wah pedals, I've 3D printed feet that bolt to the wah pedal that then bolt down to this that make it really sturdy. Mini pedals, the same thing. So I don't like wobble. I want things to be square and I want them to be solid. And we had a board similar to the one that Rick has right here. Why don't you show them what that is?
And are you selling and supplying the plates separately?
Plates, just with the black plates. And then if not everybody wants the translucent.
Yeah.
It's the feature that we put in there. And frankly, I'm a big fan of the clean look of just a solid black plate.
Mm-hmm.
So they ship with this. You can buy these as an option if you want to activate and turn on the lights in the pods. So,
yeah, well, I was just thinking to myself, you could, as a guitarist, if you've got an array of different pedals, like I think you mentioned it a few months ago, you can fix them up, screw it through, and have those all and then whenever you just take one off, put it on, and they're fixed in with the original screws
in minutes and change the voltage in seconds. So it's really flexible. And we mentioned this earlier, but we also sell the pods without circuitry. So this is a traditionally wired board. We're using a 1-spot power supply. These pods are $29.95. And this is a way for the guitarist on a budget to get into PedalPods and still have the modularity without breaking the bank.
And as we were saying, from a stability standpoint, you know, take 3 rows of those and Rick driving his vehicle up on them. But when we were at Winter NAMM, we had a board very similar to this that we were throwing on the ground, you know, as a setup. We weren't gently placing it. We were grabbing it by the handle and basically horseshoe tossing it onto the ground and playing it, and people would freak out. And I'm like, no, it's not going to hurt anything. And so we really did try to make them as functional, as light, but as rigid as or as sturdy as possible.
Could you just show us the side view of that, because you've got some raised back pods there.
So each pod comes with risers that you can add or you don't have to add. So like the front row we've got without the risers. The second row we've elevated so that you can clear the first row, you know, with your foot.
Make it easier to step over and get to it.
Yeah.
Or you could remove that riser, and this is on the exact same angle for like a wah pedal, or if you didn't want to have that elevation. So all the barefoot buttons and everything else that people are putting on, you really don't need it, because taking that step from here to here is that easy. And you can continue to add these for your height. Now, the other thing that people have talked about is, oh, they're big, they're bulky. Are they larger than a lot of boards out there? Yeah, but by 1/4 of an inch or less. If you take a competitor's board, this lip height from here to here, the competitor board goes about right here. It's not even 1/4 of an inch in most cases. And in some cases, it's higher. You can't see through them like you can a traditional, you know, pedal train as an example. So they look bulkier, but from a height standpoint, they're within, you know, right where it needs to be.
You know, it depends on the individual, on what they, I mean, a lot of wooden boards, you know, they're bigger and bulkier, and you can't, you know, they have solid sides and everything. But they're beautiful.
Yeah, I mean,
and there's always a market for that. And I think, yes, whilst the PedalPod systems is bulkier, I hear more. I mean, as I said, my board is pretty large. As I said, I have the large board because I have pretty much a selection of everything that I will potentially need. So if the band say, right, we're going to play X song, I've got that chorus there, or I've got that flanger there, or I've got a delay there, you know, so it's a practicality point of view. But more and more people, it seems to be going back towards smaller type of boards, and the type of board size where you've got, and I'm just looking on here, where you've got like 4 pedals in a row, and that's pretty much it. And there's probably 2 rows. And there seems to be a push towards that kind of size of board these days, which fits right in with the PedalPods.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, you can get too many pedals on there. And we have people talk about, oh, you've got this space. What's the here? So here's this multi-effect again. And you just saw the other board. And I'm assuming the boss board's still in a screen image somewhere.
Yep.
Okay. The gap in between here, they're absolutely right. We did this for a reason. We wanted it to be smaller, but we tried to develop the system that would work with 90% of the pedals that are out there. And obviously there's no consistency in pedal size, but it's close, right? It fits and it looks beautiful on there. Could you slide this off to the edge and put another one on and have it overlap like this effects is? Absolutely. You know, Rick's big board behind us, this is going to be easier than doing the other deal. If you look at that board, whoop, if I can figure this out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, that is.
That's all on pods.
Yeah.
Right. We've got risers on the ends for elevation, and everything in the middle is on one plane. So you're not locked into any one shape or configuration. You have total flexibility.
And back to the boss side of it. We're just going to do this for now. Back to the boss board. I mean, it is, sorry, you guys, if I'm making anybody motion sick, I apologize in advance. Okay, so you've got the wah effect. All this is on the same plane. I'll show a side view of it. But the advantage of this board is Rick's board started out like this. This is how crazy Rick is. And I'll go up in 2 weeks and it'll be a different size because that's what he likes to do. So all these are screwed in from behind. You can see the cable management. I am big on the cable management side of it. And we color matched. So you got a light blue, a dark blue, a yellow, a white. We did red because I didn't know what color to do on it. Another dark blue. So we were able to match the colors to the pedals. But once again, we have people that'll do it based off of effect type and what those back colors are. But could I slide this pedal over and get another pedal right here? Absolutely. There's no reason why you couldn't do it. You just have to realize the individual that designed these things, being me, is very anal and likes everything symmetrical and wires tucked and everything has a place. That's who I am, and that's why the system looks the way it does.
But the other thing is, with a lot of some effects, particularly wahs, and I'm thinking about the wah I have now. It's got a rotary knob on the side. It's got three rotary knobs on the sides, two very tiny ones. It's a Jim Dunlop 535Q. So it's got two very tiny rotary knobs. One is the volume, one is the EQ, and the other is a larger rotary knob which alters the wah EQ, the tone of the wah, if you like. And when you've got the pedals close together, it's very awkward to actually turn and also to actually look at the side to see where the arrow's pointing on those knobs because it's too close up to the next port. So there are benefits to having that where there is space between each pedal, particularly with wah pedals or maybe some expression pedals where there's some controls on the side.
Yeah. I don't know if you can see that because I'm on an off angle, but you can see Rick's double pedals.
Absolutely, yeah.
There.
But let me make one point, Steve. One great thing about our system too is that your signal chain order does not have to match the physical order on the board. I've got pedals in the front here that actually appear last in the signal chain, but I need to get to them. So they're in the front of the board, and looking at the wiring, you'd never know because everything's underneath. So you have the flexibility to make your signal path and your physical order completely different if you want to.
It's all with what patches. So if this is a pod, where does this one plug? Could it be up here for number 2? Could it be right next to it for number 2? Could it be above it for number 2? It's all depends on the patch cables. And we ship 2 different lengths of patch cables in order to do that.
Very nice. Excellent.
So you hear people like people are critical and they're really brave on social media, the trolls, if you want to call them that, or keyboard courage, whatever word you want to use for it. And I try to take the criticism in, and there's some great ideas that have come from people that are part of the next rev, and there's new revs in my head that eventually I'll get to. But we hear from people. There's a gentleman by the name of Gabe in Texas who has 2 sets of boards. He has one that stays at his church full time and one that he tours with. And the first thing he saw and fell in love with was the spacing, because he has size 13 or 14 and he plays in boots. He's like, I can't do this on stage ballet trying to press the right button. And he goes, I like that it's spaced out and has that. And we have other people that tour that will cram as many pedals on that.
That's it.
As they can.
It will depend. And whilst there's a market for people that want, small frameworks of pedal boards, there is people that like, I'm looking at new boards now, and I was looking at some timber-based boards, and they're chunky. And there's a market for that. And yeah, the industry needs new ideas like this to challenge the norms, if you like.
It's not bent steel and it's not wood.
Yeah. Yeah, very
I
nice.
mean, really, we really wanted to come up with a product that wasn't a Me Too product, that made people pay attention and look at it. And like I said, you're seeing what's available right now, and for the near future. But there's things, I have my little mad scientist lab that a couple people have had insight into it, and they're like, okay, this is crazy what you're doing with this thing. So it's fun.
So it's been in development since 2016. When did you bring it out onto the market?
We did our first NAMM show in
18 or 19, yeah.
2018.
Right.
And what has the response been like? And then particularly, you've got a few endorsements. You've got Ellen. Have you got any other sort of endorsements? And
Ryan Stasik, the bassist for Humphreys McGee and Doom Flamingo, he has a board. Andrew and Justin of Chameleon's Box, a band out of the UK, they both have boards.
Right.
We've got some regional guys, Indecision here in Virginia, that play all over the Southeast. We actually have the bass player as well. So we have 3 boards in their band.
Kinsey Kincaid band.
Kinsey Kincaid band here in Richmond.
All of them have them. Yeah.
My bassist in my band, and I obviously play those. Wams of Future Birds out of Georgia is a guitar player that he has an acoustic rig. So the satisfaction, I know
for all those that we forgot, we apologize.
Yeah. But the customer satisfaction has been great. I mean, people genuinely seem to love these things. And I think we've actually had more sales in add-ons than we have
initial
in the original boards.
Yeah.
So that tells us that the modularity is beneficial and that people do appreciate it and like it.
Yeah, that's great. And finally, I mean, without giving too much away, because obviously you know you've got patents, and I'm sure you want to keep a lot of under wraps, but are you able to give us kind of an insight of what you might be offering next, or what you're working on at the minute?
Well, the thing that we're offering next is we got to sell a lot more of these. We'll give you a little insight. We had this go into manufacturing or into production, and we bought a large quantity of these and paid for air freight, trying to beat the tariffs here in the US when the whole trade war thing went down, and we missed the cutoff by 2 days. So not only did we buy a lot of inventory, but we paid for air freight and we paid the 25% tariff on them.
Right.
So we got beat up a little bit on that. From a development cost, there's a lot of little things that have been developed. In my head and on paper, and actually on a test platform, there's a version of this that is app controllable to change order and do some of these things. Now, for the purists out there that are like analog or die, this is an analog to digital converter and then back to analog. So it's not a pure analog solution like this is, but it's pretty slick how it works. There's some reconfigurable on sizes. What are some of the other fun things?
We've kicked around the idea of a non-modular version that's more of a traditional platform type of board, but with the backlighting and all the power solution and the noise reduction and all that.
Yep.
So
there's just, like I said, there's a lot of little things that I'd want to keep close to the vest. There's a mod that I did to a Boss pedal that allows us to connect a Boss pedal, well, any pedal, with just a single category cable plugged in.
no patch cables.
No patch cables, no power required. It's just, you plug that into the back of the pedal, plug it into the board, and it's done with system. So there's a lot of fun little things on it. The good thing is that we're happy with the system. People are happy with the system, so we don't feel that we have to reinvent it in order to get traction in selling it. Some of the other things that we've had fun with that I didn't mention, the pods are made from ABS plastic, a high impact ABS plastic. For those of us that are old enough to remember the old Motorola brick phones, it's the exact same compilation as that. But what makes it nice is that it's pre-primered plastic or low oil plastic. You can wipe it down with denatured alcohol and paint it with any kind of plastic paint. So we played around with that. I have top plates and pods that I hydro dipped. For those people that have go out and research hydro dipping, so basically I can put any pattern or image onto these pods. And so all the good ones Rick stole from me. But anything from camo patterns to insane clowns to
band logos,
right?
That sort of thing.
Yeah, so that's been fun to play around with. It's just a matter of there's not enough time in the day to really get a lot of it out. And from an engineering cost standpoint, all these products are ULCE, FCC approved. They're dual voltage, so it'll work over in the UK as well as it will hit here or in South America. But we did it right between the cost to get the patents and then to make sure that it had all of the certifications. The system, when we put it in for UL and FCC testing, they called up and asked for more pods. And I'm like, well, why do you need more pods? I sent them 12. And they said, because we haven't broke it yet. And they tested it till it broke. And so I'm like, well, how many more do you want? And they go, well, send us out another 12 pods. And so I sent out another 12 pods. And they ran through the test and said, we still haven't broken it yet. And I'm like, well, I don't know how many people are going to do more than that. And they go, well, we'll certify it for 25 pods. I said, or 25 pods in the gas pedal. I said, okay, that's fine. Certify it for that. So I mean,
we actually have a board out there that's almost 25 pods.
It's actually more.
Yeah.
Not per our request, but because the guy is passionate about pedals. So yeah, it's some other ideas that have come up with doing MIDI. And for those who know about MIDI, it's expensive for licensing as well as for, some of the components that you have to do in order to have MIDI. We do have boards that have MIDI on them. We're just not a MIDI controller, and they're using the internal wire management to route cables. So that's been helpful. There's some other stuff that I'd rather keep to myself.
Absolutely.
Like absolutely. I said, it's nice that I'm proud that we built a system that when we want to implement these things, it's not a complete retooling and refit. It's literally just dropping in changes to a circuit board or external components. We talked about the keystones earlier and what you can utilize those for accessories. Rick's volume control came because his audio engineer keeps on turning him down and the bass player up throughout the course of the night. That should give everybody an indication of how Rick's playing skills are, by the way.
We're working on that.
So it, that was simple to implement. The category cable to be able to join multiple boards together and break them apart efficiently was from a customer who tours and records. And he's like, I have this set of pedals that I utilize only when I'm in the studio, and I've got this board that I use when I gig, and I just want to be able to simply plug the two together without having to break it apart. So that was a simple plug this in on one side, this in on the other, and now the two boards are combined. And when he's not in the studio, he unplugs it and he tours. So very simple.
But nice if you can connect that up to, well, I suppose you could connect it up to any interface, audio interface anyway. You can do that now anyway, can't you?
Yeah. We have an example of I don't have any images of it. And I would encourage people to go to mypedalpods.com, go to the website, look at the images. Those are images that were sent in. Now there's a couple of stock images that we've done or pictures of one of Rick's new boards or whatever, but the majority of those are sent in by board owners. But the point that I was going to make is there's a recording studio that has the gas pedal in the engineering room, and then there's a category cable that runs to the rest of the pods. It's on the sound booth side of it for the artist, because they don't need to have access to this. And so the only connection point is a 50-foot version of this.
Very nice.
There's just fun things, and we learn new stuff all the time. I'll get a phone call, somebody go, hey, have you ever thought about this? And then Rick will come over and he sees this notepad with all these notes. And it's like, what are you doing? Just leave me alone. I got an idea. So, the battery, something as stupid as, this could be a pod location. You'd never have to plug into the wall, take a 24-volt battery, and guess what? Now your board's powered. And that's what we were using to power and show the demo earlier.
Wow.
So you'd never have to travel with the power supply again. If you want it truly isolated from earth ground, that's how you do it. Put that in a pod location and you're good to go.
Yeah. And you know what? That would actually cut out a lot of noise as well, because when you're connecting your board up, if your board's powered to the mains, and particularly if that mains or that cable is connected to the lights, you get a lot of interference. Whereas that would cut that out, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And everybody's familiar with 60 hertz hum, which can be a ground loop. Most of the time it's a ground loop because the differential is in ground. I'm not saying that that our system will absolutely guarantee no ground loop, because we've seen it. We've seen older amps that the best reference for ground is through the patch cable and not through the ground cable on the power supply. But we really went to a lot of effort to design an audio circuit and a power circuit that really tries to reject noise. And it's fun. A gentleman that helped us that I don't think we give enough credit to when we first started doing this was James Brown, who's amp tweaker. And I was fortunate enough to work with one of the companies that James was with prior to me getting into this side of the industry through my old company. And he was gracious enough to help us with all kinds of little things, little tips and tricks, and the first time that he got his hands on this, it was fun, because he's like, okay, plug it in. It is plugged in. He's like, is the noise gate on? No, your noise gate's not on. And he's like, it's quiet. And he was able to play his pedal at 9, 12, 15, and 18 volts instead of having to go get a separate power supply. We're like, oh, no, watch. Just flip the switch for him. And
he stacked 3 gain pedals.
Yeah, he stacked 3 gain pedals and just weld on it and was like, huh, okay.
And he's a shredder. People don't know that, but he's a shredder.
He is definitely a shredder. Very talented man. We love him dearly. Wow. So yeah, we've had a lot of people really give us some good insight during the design process, during the testing phases. I forget the exact rev number of boards that we went through. Rev D. Yeah, so at least 6 different versions of the gas pedal board, or not the gas pedal board, but the main board. And I don't even remember on the gas pedal how many revs I went through. So we had it all done and perfect, and had the FCC and UL certifications, and Apple went and changed their charging protocol. So we had to redo that 5-volt power supply, or the USB port, in order to accommodate, which cost me some money to get it recertified. So it's always little things that people don't think of.
Yeah, I get that. So,
but we would encourage feedback. We'd love people to go check out the site. We're accessible. There's a link, info@mypedalpods.com. Rick and I's emails are on there. Hit us up. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. And we take it passionately to get back with people as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you so much. It's been intriguing, and I wish you absolutely all the best with it. I think it's a great idea. I genuinely do. I think it's a great idea, new and unique, and looking forward to posting it in FX Pedal Planet community, because there was like instantly, as soon as I put the image up there, and to be honest, I put the image up there just to see what kind of reaction it will get, and to see whether people would notice. And yeah, it was, what's that board? And I said, yeah, just wait, I'm getting onto that. I'm going to get I intend getting the guys in, and all these questions started coming. I thought, yeah, that's good, that's nice. Questions are good.
It's sad that they don't look at pedal boards as part of the performance. It's just utilitarian. You see people screwing it down on shelves and laying pedals on the ground. we've had honest feedback from people that say that it's made them a better player because it's easier to manage the effects pedals on stage between the spacing and the backlight. And Rick hasn't started playing any better, but a lot of people have. So we can't guarantee it, but
we can't work miracles.
I was hoping that you might be able to get me to play like Martin Knopfler or Eric Clapton, but seeing as you can't, then I'm not interested.
But you know what? Steve, what's been fun is that we've had artists touring the East Coast or on their way to transition to go tour Europe that we've had over and like built boards with them or for them. They've come and played it. So he gets sucked in watching their playing techniques. And so the next thing you know, next time I see Rick, he's gone out and bought the same pedals that individual had. He's trying to mimic the technique.
It's a disease.
It's actually pretty funny.
It is.
You know, he got me sucked into it. I don't play, unfortunately, but I saw the challenges he was having with the guitar, and so I decided I was gonna do my own guitar, and that turned out pretty good, didn't it? Right. So
the only guy that doesn't know how to play would have a great guitar.
Hey, I was turning up to, I've been in bands for years, and every audition that we had for a second guitarist, they always turned up with better guitars than me. Every single time, and it's like,
frustrating.
But then again, I've always had a 1996 Les Paul Studio, which at the time wasn't like, it was kind of middle of the road. But now, because it's like 1996, it's like, that's a really nice guitar.
Yeah.
But yes, I can sympathize with there. It's, wanting a nice guitar and stuff. But yeah, the pedals in the industry, we're so passionate about it. So passionate about the tone, and not just the tone, it's the artistry that comes behind the pedals. And we get so passionately connected to the music and our favorite artists and the sounds that they're creating, and we're always chasing after that type of tone. It's a crazy mismatch of real sort of passion, isn't it, that we're all all following, really. So
yeah, I'm still in a 15-year chasing of David Gilmour's tone. I still haven't nailed it.
I think that's kind of what it is. We're still in that kind of schoolboy phase and thinking, I think there's a lot to be said for that. We kind of stay in that kind of phase, if you like. We grow physically, but kind of mentally, guitar wise and music wise, we still think one day we're going to be a rock star.
Yeah.
Look, thank you so much.
Thank you,
I'm so grateful that you've given us your time. I'm looking forward.
We appreciate the audience. Yeah.